Welcome to another Wise Woman Roundtable, or women, I should say, Wise Women Roundtable. So there are several of us here. And just feeling the immensity of this time that we're in and what's going on. So I'm going to share a little bit about the astrological mysteries, and then everyone else is going to share their insights about what's going on as well. So one of the things I thought I would start with, and I mentioned this a little bit before in the last video, is how much out of bounds energy is happening. And as we still have Mars out of bounds, we still have Venus and Mercury out of bounds. The moon has been going in and out of bounds twice a month, and is going to go back out of bounds again at the new moon on December 23rd. So I'm going to come back to that, but just so that we have a sense of how we are outside the boundaries of ordinary reality when we have so much energy in the out of bounds place. And this is leading us into the solstice. And of course, the solstice is the beginning of a solar new year. So we have in the northern hemisphere, we have the shortest day and the longest night. And in the southern hemisphere, it's the opposite. But we could say that 0 Capricorn point has been typically seen by most people on the planet as a new year point. And many cultures celebrated it as a new year. So we're starting this new solar cycle, and the new moon comes a couple days after that. And I have shared this before, but it's always worth sharing again because you can't hear it too many times. And it also it's just helping to call it forth into our awareness and into our consciousness that the December solstice sun rises on the galactic cross at the galactic center. And that can only happen for 144 years, 72 years on either side of the exact center point that happened in May of 1998. As calculated by astronomer Jean Muse. And so we're in this cycle from 1926 to 2070, or 1962 to 2034, if you just use the 72-year window surrounding 1998. And interesting, we are recording this on 12/12. And the December solstice is 12/21, which is a number reversal. So we have this number magic thing going on right now. 12/12 is also the feast day of Our Lady of Guadalupe, and a lot of magic that's associated with her. I won't go into that, but the 12/12, or 12 times 12 is 144. So we have that 144 piece of coming back into what's happening with us being in this transition, this 144-year transition. And the 12/12 energy, it's like a opportunity to reach beyond. Oh, here we go out of bounds again, to reach beyond the veil of time and connect with divine source energy. So I know this is something you love, Nalini, so I know you're going to speak more into this, but so I just wanted to kind of introduce that idea that we're here with that, and that the 144 is a number that has been used throughout different cultural expressions of being significant and important. And it creates a Merkaba, or a consciousness or a crystalline grid around the planet, blah, blah, blah. So anyway, so we're just in this really remarkable time. And this video is carrying the energy of this 12/12 and 12/21 being pretty much the same numbers. And so as we speed into the December solstice, and we experience the sun on the galactic cross at the galactic center, letting us know that we are at the turning of a great year. Plato called it the great year, and it's 26,000 years, well, 25,920, almost 26,000. So we just rounded up to 26,000 years. Every 26,000 years, the sun will be on this point. And in 13,000 years, it'll be on the opposite point at the galactic edge, on the galactic cross at the galactic edge. So we are so fortunate to be here at this time. We are here to be the transition team. We are here to help be the change agents that bring in this new cycle of whatever it's going to be. It's like what we're imagining, what we're bringing forth within ourselves, what we're healing within ourselves, and how we're coming together to support one another is what's seeding this great cycle. And then, of course, every December solstice, we're seeding a new solar cycle. And so what are we going to seed in this December solstice? Something to be thinking about. The other thing is that on December 23rd, when we have the new moon, just a couple of days after the exact solstice, and the sun is still pretty close to the galactic cross, because the sun actually stands still. Solstice means stand still, and the sun rises in the same place for 3 days precisely, and for 3 weeks pretty close at the solstice point. So that standstill of the sun, so that means that we're still very close to that center point, and the new moon is happening there. Now, the other thing that's fascinating about this new moon is it's a perigee new moon, meaning the moon is closest to the earth. The moon, when the moon is closest to the earth, especially at a new moon or a full moon, the tides are higher, the high tides are higher, the tectonic plates of the earth are activated. So there's volcanoes and earthquakes and different things that happen, and we've been seeing that because we had a perigee full moon eclipse back in November. We're going to have 3 more. One in January will be the closest one of this century, next to the one that happened in 2005. There's only 2 really super close ones, and it'll be in January of this year. Talk more about that probably in our next video. But so we have these amazing things happening. So not only is this a perigee moon close to the earth, so it's having a bigger impact on the earth itself, it's also a out of bounds moon. The moon will be outside the boundaries of ordinary reality. So this solstice and this solstice new moon is just off the charts amazing. And shortly after, the next day, in fact, Venus and the moon will meet for the first time in the evening sky. Venus just came into the evening sky in early December. Some people have seen her. If you're in a farther south latitude with a low horizon line, you've probably seen her. I saw her briefly the other night in the red glow of the sunset. And this is the first gate. What's interesting is that the moon and Venus meeting on December 24th, she may still be in that red glow. And this is considered the root chakra gate, where she's reclaiming a healthy relationship to her root chakra, to the root of who she is and how she connects to the earth and the sky and all of the mysteries that are all around her. And so in addition to that, Mercury is very close by, and Mercury's been with Venus since, well, within 10 degrees, probably since late October. They were exact, I think November 21st, they were exact together, and then they are still within a few degrees. They're going to be exact together again on December 29th. And they'll both have returned to be inside the boundaries now at that time. But Mercury is the one that Venus meets in the story of Inanna and her descent. When she comes out of the underworld, Ninshbar is waiting for her when she comes out of the underworld, and Inanna is Venus and Ninshbar is Mercury. And so, of course, they're meeting. And as Mercury's going retrograde on December 29th. So we're going to have this retrograde energy, meaning that we have an opportunity to really consider how we're communicating with ourselves and with each other. It's in Capricorn, so it's ideally we're doing it in ways that are responsible and will get results. So the other thing, I'll just back up to the December 23rd new moon, is it's a Jaguar day in the Mayan calendar. And I get really excited about Jaguar days because I didn't know this, but I found out some years ago from a Mayan elder that I was born on a Jaguar day. But this is one of the most significant days in the Mayan calendar. It happens every 20 days, but happening on a new moon, the Jaguar energy, it's definitely, the Mayans saw this as the energy that's assisting humanity in coming into a new way of being. And so this is, and to do it with gratitude and integrity and certain ways. And I will put in the show notes an article about Jaguar and how you can find out what Mayan day you were born on. There'll be a link to that in the article. So this is setting this new solar year and lunar month, and also part of our greater great year energy that's coming in with this earth magic. I mean, Jaguar is connected to earth magic. And so being able to honor that earth Jaguar medicine that's happening on the new moon of December 23. So all of these things are giving us a sense that we're just in an extraordinary time, and it's our opportunity to be witness to it and to do the best that we can to help with this transition in the best ways, the most effective ways, the most joyful ways possible. So with that, I think I'm going to turn this over to Sarah and see what she has to share with us.
Thank you. Thank you, Kaylin. So yeah, I love what you're saying, because it reminds me again and again just how when we sit in rhythm with what's going on in the skies, our own lives here on this earth have more meaning and more purpose. So it always makes me smile. I'm somebody who spent the first 40 years of her life really disliking Sundays, and all of the times when you couldn't do anything, you know, all of the times when you got grounded. And I was just like, I was almost proud of it. It was just like, oh my goodness, I am so bored on Sundays because the shops are shut. What am I going to do with myself? And so as all of these things, I had a wake-up call in my 40s and started, and it was actually watching the moon that actually woke those teachings up in me. And watching the cycles of the earth was just so deeply, deeply calming to me. I can't really say it in any other way. It was just like coming home to me when I started to realize just how out of sync, how disconnected I was. So my work is obviously taking essences, and all of the things that I do obviously was part of that. But watching the cycles of all parts of my life has been huge. And the more that I do it, the more I realize that when we actually literally put our bottoms on the earth, you know, literally ground ourselves into the wisdom of the earth, that all of our lights get switched on. That's exactly what I see, without any of the knowledge. It kind of it helps to have the knowledge because it's kind of fun, but actually we don't really need it, because it's innately in us. There's kind of like a magnetic force. And again, I don't, Elizabeth, you could probably tell me how it works, but I don't know. I just can see it, how it works. So really all that wants to come through me right now is something that we all know, but I just keep hearing it. And I just spent the afternoon with some priestesses and some high priestesses, and it's all we talked about. So I know it's not unique to me, but I'll talk about it as it came to me. A couple of weeks ago, I was putting myself under all sorts of pressure to do this and this and this because it's fun and because I wanted to do it. And I was also realizing it was causing me a lot of anxiety underneath the currents. And then just one morning I woke up and you know what, Sarah, it's winter. Stop. And I kind of like got quiet in myself, and all of a sudden this relief flooded through to myself. It's like, oh, and everything started to change. Now, I know this because I've just shared with you that I know it and it's part of my teachings, but I had kind of got lost. Not lost, it's not the right word. I hadn't realized just how is really what I want to say is, and this is what I'm noticing in myself and people that I'm working with, is that right now it's even more important than normal to stop. Even those of us who are kind of wired to go and we kind of slow down, it feels like really important now just to stop and to trust that everything will plug itself back in and reconnect when it needs to. And so hearing what you were saying, Kaylin, reminded me of the need to pay attention, to not just slow down, but almost stop, put our ears to the earth and just really, really listen to our own truths with it. And, you know, February the 1st, February the 2nd in bulk, and even maybe later is maybe the time to start again for those of us here in the Northern Hemisphere. And what I'm noticing as well, since I stopped, is that something's starting to move through me that wasn't before. And I'm sensing that there are huge codes and energetic templates that are coming down onto the earth. It's all new to me to kind of feel these energies, actually, which is a bit of a strange thing for me to say. But I feel that there is so much coming through us that's changing our cellular structure. I dreamt last night of my cells rearranging themselves. The lights, they were going flashing on and off different colors, and it was just like, and I was awake but asleep, watching all of these energies move through myself. And I was like, I've never experienced this before. So my sense is, without knowing, maybe Elizabeth and Nalini, you can talk more into it from a more knowing sense, maybe, that there is just extraordinary amounts of shifts going on that is available to us, and they'll move through us anyway. But the more aware we are, the more relaxed we are, and the more we will allow it through. Yeah. And so on that note, Elizabeth, I hand over to you.
Yeah, so are we gonna have Nalini go next, or would you like to go last this time, Nalini?
Either way is fine. I thought we had decided I'll go last, but if you would rather not, I can speak.
No, it's totally fine. That's great. So let's jump into so it's kind of interesting because this last discussion I missed it, and I'm getting the same information as you, Sarah, about stopping, which is super hard for me to do. And having just turned 40 in this past fall, recognizing that this is that message that comes when Venus returns into our lives. So I'm watching this wave of consciousness, and I've been tracking it all year, and it's come now to the root. So that makes sense that Venus is going to come and take her place back in the root energetic. And the root piece is really important because it's all about survival. It's all about the thriving, whether or not we're thriving in our beingness, not necessarily thriving in our doing, but our own being. It's all about expectations and attachments to outcomes and how these things might unfold, and how the illusions that are being shattered right now. I would say we're in sort of a grand consciousness shift in humanity where illusions are being shattered. And so those illusions being shattered is creating a lot of anger, and that's very root chakra too. But this anger is really unique. It's different. It's kind of like trying to get something finished in consciousness, but you're not allowed to unless you're willing to meet Kali on the road. And when you meet Kali on the road, you're facing the power of time. You're facing the power of the fact that nothing can last in reality. It's not supposed to. And I think people equate Kali to death, and I understand why they might do that. But in my experience, my limited experience so far, Kali is time. And when time greets you at the end of these cycles and these huge shifts that occur that are so mind-blowing and a little bit hard to imagine, they almost seem like a fantasy or a myth, but all myth is based in reality. And these fantasies don't come from nowhere. They're not created in a vacuum. But when you're faced with time and these cycles, it's the recognition of your position in reality. And that's when you ask yourself, well, who am I really? And I think Kaylin's spot on when she says we're the transition team. Well, transition team has to be very, very strong and powerful. You have to have been invited to do this whole human thing in the first place. You have to have had a lot of skin in the game to be here now, because we're at the end of the Homo sapien and the beginning of something quite new. that a lot of different mystics have been calling Homo luminous, the human of light. And so we are in complete out of bounds. We have no idea what this is going to be like. Nothing like this has ever happened in this galaxy. And then the Earth speaking to us. I'm noticing that, especially when I turn my Wi-Fi off and I just unhook from my cell phone and the whole virtual world, which is just quite messy energetically, especially these days, that there's all this power and energy coming up from the Earth, and it's templates of wisdom. She's releasing a lot of information. Her electromagnetic field is going inward into herself, and as that happens, there's an unfolding that's simultaneously occurring. But it's not just from her, it's from the galaxy too. So we have two sets of templates that are available to us, but you can't be caught up in other frequencies. Literally, physically, you can't be caught up in Wi-Fi frequency or 4 or 5G, whatever frequencies, in order to feel them, in order to sense them. And I think Sarah's also quite right that making sure your feet are actually literally physically grounded on the earth, which is hard to do when it's cold, but it's worth it if you can do that. And if you can't, if you really can't, hug a tree. It does the same thing. There creates an electromagnetic circuit that's based on ions, and it pushes positive ions out of your body, which you're gathering all the time with any sort of frustrations and Wi-Fi and internet stuff and cell phone towers. You're gathering up all this positive ionic energy, which causes the electromagnetics of your body to feel like you're chaotic and panicky and unable to focus your attention. And that's a big, huge distraction. That's an illusion. So when you connect to a tree or you connect your physical body to the ground, you're actually working with negative ions. You're cleaning up the positive ionic energy. You're allowing all the positive ions to be utilized by the rest of the living web around you. And you get a reset, and resetting every day at this moment, right as we get up closer to solstice, is absolutely key. You get an opportunity every day to choose the relationships you're in, to choose how long you're going to meditate, to choose to garden, or to choose to be married, to choose to be a parent. You don't just get married once. You get to choose that every day. You get to choose the state of your being each day. And this is the clarity that I feel is coming through this wave of consciousness, having moved very systematically through the whole body. Now it's opening up the root. And I'm getting all these reports from different people, very calm, gentle people saying, I have so much anger running through my body. What is going on? I'm like, you gotta be humbled by the righteous rage of this age. And as Kali meets you on the road, it's the humble people who make it past into unconditional love. When you're willing to humble yourself to the choices that you've made, to all the micro navigations that got you here, of the grand galactic choices you made to be part of this cycle change, this human change, this consciousness change, the planetary change, all at once. And to be humbled by the fact that nothing that's been happening on this earth right now has ever happened quite like this in this galaxy or anywhere else. That's how new and out of bounds everything is at the moment. So anyone saying that they know exactly how the future is going to unfold, well, that's boring. Drop it and be willing to be very present in this body that you have, because this is the key. So the rage, I feel, is really quite important because it's righteous anger, and it's important because humans haven't been in balance with nature for so long. And that's what the templates are that come from Gaia. It's natural law that she's laying out for us once again, as she always does at the end of every 12,000 year cycle. So I think ultimately the beingness, being able to let anger move through you and give you more clarity instead of it jumbling up your energy field, grounding yourself physically on the earth, And as solstice comes, being willing to dive into the void, because the void isn't empty, it's full of light. It's just that inside the movement of the universe and all the busyness of everything in consciousness, the light seems to always have a source. It comes from a person, or it comes from the source field or an object. But in the void, which is actually this grand sort of substrate of clear light that permeates all realities, all universes, the light doesn't have a source, and you can rest in that. And there's a difference between the nothingness of apathy that gobbles up all of the genuine experiences in consciousness, that people are looking at this apathy saying, I'm afraid of this nothingness that just gobbles everything up. There's a big difference between that and the release, the surrender, which is not apathy, it's the opposite. The surrender to just being in the moment, to being attentive. Your attention creates reality. And if you're conscious about this clear light, the beautiful part of the void, the substrate of that from which all things arise, the light that doesn't have a source but has always been there and will always be there. It's that endless, inevitable light that now is becoming more and more and more apparent. And if you unhook, then you'll be able to feel it. You'll be able to ground into it, and it will get you through the solstice and any fear or any anger or any humility that you really need to go through, any fear around survival or anything like that. There's this opportunity now for you to reset. And I think it's probably one of the greatest solstices that's ever happened. And I'm sure there'll be some more really amazing ones, but we're right on the brink of a very new consciousness, which will be humans having broken out of their shattered shell of illusions and recognizing what truth really is. So that's how I'm seeing everything unfold right now. And it's very exciting. And I'm always catching myself, noticing my fears and then recognizing them and grounding back into being a living bridge. All of us are these beautiful bridges between heaven and earth, between the galactic and the earthly. And that's our job right now as part of the transition team. So hook in right now, because there'll be some doing to do later, but I think it's such a beautiful message to stay very still and pay very close attention to the light as it clarifies everything. So thank you so much. And thanks, Nalini, for what I know you'll impart for all of us at this moment.
Thanks, Elizabeth. This is not about me. It's not about any of us. It's how source flows through this moment and how we are each fractals of light in source's kaleidoscope here. We just happen to show up with a lens at the moment. I'm enjoying listening to everyone. Kaylin and I were talking about the out of bounds nature of things earlier before everybody else got on. Just how unscripted, that's another word that's been used. How nobody knows what's going to happen. We're in the unknown. We're in the in-between. These are all very, not bad, but very human ways of talking about things that we have no idea about mentally. And this is good, but our bodies do. Nature does. Nature is well able to handle this. And we divorce ourselves. We're taught to do this. We divorce ourselves from that process. But these bodies that we're in for this incarnation, which are a complete privilege, it's a privilege to be here at this time, they're part of nature. They're not separate at all. And so I loved that Sarah was saying, go put your bum on the earth. Yeah, I mean, there are ski pants. If one can't put feet in the snow, one can sit. One can go hug a tree. It's all of that earthing is just so important. And the interesting thing that's happening with this involution, it's like we are all going supernova, and the thing that happens when that happens to a star is they implode into something so absolutely intense that it can't do anything else. And this isn't a conscious choice on our part, except the conscious choice to incarnate now, to be here now, is that this is happening not to us, but through us. And one of the things that I've been seeing, I mean, it's interesting what everybody brings up, because there's a classic Kali ritual, because as many of you know, Kali's my girl. Anyway, but it's that one approaches Kali or is met by Kali on the road, which is usually how it happens. Again, this is a metaphor for all of the fiery aspects of life. But the thing to do is not run, not hide, because ridiculous, not going to help, but to, in the Vedic traditions, what one does is one prostrates in front of her wide open bloody maw and says, okay, swallow me. And we become lunch for Kali. And what happens is the same thing when we face dragon energy. It's exactly the same wave, is that it passes through us, we pass through it. There's a simultaneous morph that happens, and we are illuminating in the fractals of our being that will come together in a new way. And the way it's described in the Vedas is, the body turns to ash, everything burns off that is illusion. Well, our bodies are illusion, and yet they are here as ambulatory pieces of nature. And when we are fully absorbed, as each of you have described in your own way, we are simply part of that. And it's the egoic self, the personality, the mind, the stuff we insist that we are. Because whenever we say I am, Source says, okay. If you say I am sad, Source says, okay, that's a valid experience. Or if you say I am impoverished, Source says, okay. And I don't mean to denigrate any of those experiences. Some of them are very intensive, very difficult, but we make those choices, as Elizabeth was saying. It's and the choice now is ours, is to go with this immense flow. Last week there were 40 volcanoes erupting on the planet. 34 of them were in the Ring of Fire. That's interesting. And none of them, well, Mauna Loa made big news because it hasn't erupted since 1994 or 8, I can't remember which, but 84, something like that. Anyway, but it's in a cycle. The volcanologists were saying this is a cycle. This is a cycle that's bringing the pristine elementals of magma to the surface. And it's such a wonderful metaphor for what's happening with the out-of-bound planets, for what's happening in nature. So as I was meditating this morning, and I don't think about things in the way that most people do, but I'd let these things bubble through. And what I was seeing were chestnuts. Sarah will appreciate this. There are the chestnuts that are lovely and delicious, and you roast them at this time of the year, and they're warm and buttery and comforting and really, really healthy for your body. And then there are the horse chestnuts, whose essence and extract is also really healthy for the body, but you can't eat them. They're poisonous. They're also known as the nut that comes out is also known as a buckeye, which in part of my growing up was in the state of Ohio, and they call it the Buckeye State because there's so many of those chestnut trees there. What I used to love was the smell when the skin, which is very prickly, it almost looks like an oversized rudraksha seed, where it's very prickly and it starts to split open, and there's just this incredible smell. Nothing else is like it, and you really don't want to get that stuff on your hands because it doesn't come off. But there's this aspect of this, and I was thinking, chestnuts, what's that about, other than we are all chestnuts roasting in the solstice fires? But it was spiritual chestnuts was the phrase that came through, and I thought, okay, yes, because there are all these things in life, all of the virtual realities, the broadcasting frequencies, but there are all these things in life that we don't understand, that we grab onto. And then there are all these things that came through our cellular inheritance, where the body holds fast to that simply because it doesn't know any different. And then there are the so-called spiritual chestnuts, which are the nuggets of belief. Now, a belief system is just a thought pattern that you argue for. There's some reason for it. There's some benefit for it. It's not necessarily real. But think of all the spiritual chestnuts, even the Kali ritual, or anything that you really hold true. Like, I hold this spiritual nugget to my heart. And at the moment, the galactic heart with which we are aligned is saying, let's just melt that little puppy and see how you do with that. And so it's letting go of all. I mean, let the chestnuts roast in the solstice fires, because they're going to anyway. And then let that, the essence of that, the healing essence of all of that, and how it functions through our bodies and through nature, let that take its course. Let that do what it's going to. And understand that everything that our minds and our beliefs have built up spiritually is melting. It's coming apart into that light, into that clear light, the Dharmakaya, and or by whatever tradition you call it. And it's just letting that happen at whatever level, whether you're looking at the skies, or whether you're looking at the green world, or whether you're looking galactically. We are all multidimensional beings. And that is coming in through these out of bounds energies, through these outside the box energies, so that we see we were never in a box at all, ever. And that we build these lovely boxes for ourselves. Like when you're a little kid and you put the, what do they call that? I never can remember the name of that paper, that hard paper that's colored, and then you use crayons and you design it all up. Well, what if we didn't? I mean, they're fun to play with, but what if we didn't do that? What if we let these streams, these star streaming essences that are coming through us right now, just light up everything that we are, every fractal, every cell, every particle, and see what happens? There's another tradition that every 5 seconds we reset. Every 5 seconds. So think about that for a second. So now, reset, 2, 3, 4, 5. Reset. And it just goes on and on and on. They use this in the deep meditative traditions. They use the clapping or sticks, for when people start to fall asleep, which isn't very kind, but I guess it worked. You can also just let the pulse of nature, the cycles, come through the heart and light up everything that you are, and especially the stuff that you never imagined you could be, and see what happens. So that to me is the time we're in. I love the image of the chestnut because it's so much fun. They're such precious little beings. They hold so much health and magic. So thank you, my lovely sisters, for being here, and everyone watching. It is a very special, special solstice time. So